paratrooper. Jumped out of a perfectly good airplane.
You're all ready, Linda.
Are we ready?
Okay.
Okay. Hi, this is the Mary L. Cook Library, Waynesville, Ohio, October 18th, 2002. And today we are interviewing Donald James Robinson, a World War II veteran. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Kind of want to start off here a little bit, if you would. Please just tell us what branch of the service that you were in and the time that you served and what you did.
Well, December 7th, 1941, I was attending Ohio State University. In fact, on December 7th, I was in a movie, came out, and all of a sudden heard a newsboy hawking papers, Pearl Harbor bomb, Pearl Harbor attack, and nobody knew where that was.
Yeah.
I was in ROTC at Ohio State, and eventually we joined what they call the Enlisted Reserve Corps, ERC. You were sworn in but inactive, and then April 15th of 1943 I asked for active duty, and they very kindly obliged me. So, I went on active duty April 15th, sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for basic, and kind of interesting. There's a little thing about the war, a lot of it is luck. You know, things that happen to you. During my first cycle of basic, I got the mumps, and it kind of messed my records up. I wound up taking another cycle. Always claimed I was a best-trained soldier coming out of World War II in Fort Bragg, because I think I had close to 30 weeks basic. So, but if I hadn't got the mumps, I would have wound up in the 17th Airborne Gliders, who took a pretty good beating when they jumped the Rhine, went over the Rhine. So anyway, out of when I finished basic at Bragg, we about a 100-man shipment. I think at age 20, I was the oldest out of that shipment, to give you some idea. And went to Camp Gruber, Oklahoma, where trucks were waiting for us with 643rd Tank Destroyer, Tank Destroyer TD Battalion. They had taken a pretty good beating in North Africa, and that didn't exactly thrill us, but I went into A Company, 3rd Platoon A Company, 643rd. And we trained out in Gruber, and not too long. We went to Camp Swift, Texas, moved to Camp Swift, and down there 2 or 3 months, turned around, came back to Gruber, and started preparing for overseas training. And then I'm trying to think when we left, around September or end of August of 1944. We moved from Gruber to Camp Miles Standish, Massachusetts. Pardon me?
Just listening.
Oh, and we arrived there, and then it's kind of port of debarkation, POE, port of embarkation, and shipped out of Boston. And a little sideline on that, I'll never forget. The band was playing as we boarded the ship, and It Had to Be You, which is it's kind of interesting, you know. But we boarded the Liberty ship and joined a 40-ship convoy.
So you didn't go over with your tank? Had your
unit
been formed
yeah,
yet?
we sure did.
So they put it on the Liberty ship with you?
Yeah, right down in the hold.
Okay.
And so the TDs, Tank Destroyer, and which is quite similar to a tank, except we couldn't button up. We were open, the turret, and which can be a little dangerous. So anyway, 13 days later, we were the first convoy into Cherbourg, and came down.
That's in France?
Pardon me?
France?
Yeah, that's in France.
So you disembarked in France versus in England?
Right, we didn't go into England. We were the first convoy to go into Cherbourg. And we came down rope ladders, went in on rafts into Cherbourg, and from there into Normandy. We were built up. I got some pictures or everything. Pub tents, we kind of built them up there, but we were in the apple orchards at Cherbourg, or at Normandy rather, and I think we were there maybe about a month, and from there down to town of Julieville and a couple of towns right across from the Jersey and Guernsey Islands, where 10,000 German were out on the islands. So we kind of patrolled the beaches, and I remember one time, in fact, I was on guard duty in a lighthouse. Came very close to falling asleep. Very, very close, which you don't do. It's kind of frowned on guard
Yeah,
duty.
that's-
So anyway, we were there for a while, and then taking care of the POWs and so forth. And then battalion kind of split. Part of us went up to Fontainebleau, France, which is outside of Paris. And in fact, it's Napoleon's old cavalry school. And we thought we had it kind of made because we were in a chateau, and we were going to be training cooks and bakers how to be gunners and tank the TD drivers and so forth. And unfortunately, December 21st, I believe it was, we got wakened about 3 in the morning and rolled them up, and we're moving out. And moved up into Belgium, a little battle called the Bulge. We had no idea where we were going or what we were doing. And pulled into position about 7 o'clock at night, foggy, snow almost up to your knees, cold, bitter, bitter cold. And went into position, and about 4 o'clock, excuse me, 4 o'clock the next morning, I happened to be on guard with a buddy, and heard noise down at another gun, where a couple of buddies of mine were. All of a sudden heard German being spoken, and so they were taken prisoner about 100 yards away. And we lost. There was a pretty good battle there at the crossroads called Parker's Crossroads. And so anyway, we had quite a few captured. We got out, went into the town of Manhay, and then Jerry, Christmas Eve '44, actually they took the town. We retreated out of the town, and with 82nd Airborne we were attached to, we came back in and retook it a couple days later. But after Manhay, out of there, we went up into Holland, changed over, got replacements, went over to what we call self-propelled. In the Bulge, we had a half-track pulling a gun, 3-inch gun, where you had to detach it and turn it around, put it in position, and not too smart an offensive weapon. But then we became full track M18, and then I was promoted to corporal, and then gunner on an M18, 76 millimeter. From there, we went into 9th Army and got attached to the 83rd Thunderbolt Division, and we were attached to them all the way across Germany. Excuse me. Where, well, we went to Ruhr Valley and across the Ruhr. We went to the Rhine, first armored unit, I think, to reach the Rhine, and town of Neuss, across from Dusseldorf. Tried to get a bridge there, and Jerry blew it. And so we were there, across the Rhine, a little bit later, town of Wessel, and attached to the 83rd, as I mentioned, and they called them the Ragtag Circus. We covered 210 miles in 10 days, which was we were kind of moving.
Yeah.
I told you earlier I might share a human interest story with you, might give a little insight. Typically what happens is when you take a town and come into it, you capture it, you put up what's called a perimeter defense, and normally what that is, you cover roads coming in. And if there's a house nearby, there's no sense of sleeping in your tank or TD. You just move into the house, in a nice bed and so forth. Well, the town before that, civilians had killed 2 or 3 83rd GIs. So we were a little bit, leery of what was happening there. But we came into this house. Our driver, his name was Brodzeller, spoke fluent German. And so we went up, I still remember we went up steps. And this housefrau, we scared the daylights out of her, as you can imagine. And gas mask told her, I said, you know, relax, we're not going to hurt you, not going to take anything. But she was making, I think she was making cookies, I remember, but we told her, you know, we gave her sugar and what have you. And then once she relaxed, she started bringing pictures out of her sons. And 3 or 4 sons. One, I think, was in the Russian front, and one was, you know, where one was. One, I think, was in Italy. And, but anyway, sharing stories about her sons.
Mm-hmm.
So that night, when we went to bed, I was on the outside, and 1 or 2 of us, maybe one more in the bed. But all of a sudden, I saw the door to her room open, and saw her come out, and I didn't know, you know, I had one eye open watching her, and put the covers back in case I had to, you know, take her down. But she came out, I didn't know she had a gun and a knife or whatever. But she stood there for a bit looking down at us, and all of a sudden she reached down and pulled the covers, you know, tucked us in bed. So mothers are mothers, I guess, you know, no matter who they are or where they are. But my daughter told me to be sure and share that with you. So anyway, from there we went across Germany and all the way to the Elbe. And at the Elbe River, where I knocked out a locomotive there, which is on the better prize I guess I got. But anyway, we crossed the Elbe River, and to a town of Zerbst, which is 40 kilometers from Berlin, 26 miles, I think, about 26 miles. And we thought we were going right into Berlin, but we stopped there and eventually met the Russians. We fired 3 green flares, they fired 3 red for recognition. We met the Russians there. And from there, we pulled back over the Elbe, and back to the town of Bad Harzburg in the Harz Mountains, down to Bad Freiburg, Bad Nauheim outside of Frankfurt, and from there to Camp Lucky Strike, and returned on a Sea Robin, came back a little quicker than when we went over, maybe 8 or 9 days. Came back then to the United States, landed at Newport News, Virginia, had a 30-day redeployment furlough because we were heading for the Pacific. But while on the train to California, it's Camp San Luis Obispo, they dropped the atomic bomb. So we had enough points that we didn't have to go to Japan. And our battalion was deactivated, and we got attached to the 104th, from which I was discharged December of 1945, December 19th, I think. But and then in 1947, I joined 48. I joined the reserve. I was in the active reserve for 4 years. That's pretty much it.
Well, no, let me back up. There's a couple points I'd like to know a little more about.
Sure.
So you first saw battle basically in Belgium.
In Belgium.
In Belgium.
Correct.
What was your typical day like at that point? I know you were in a tank, and probably didn't sleep much. Can you just, tell us what a typical day was like when you hit Belgium and the bullets were flying?
Well, actually, I don't know what other vets have said to you, but a great part of the time you don't know it don't matter if you know what the hell's going on.
That's fine.
You know what's happening. And so the night we pulled in, and actually not knowing where we were, and had no idea the name of the town, where we knew we were in the woods, and my own particular crew, we were very, very lucky at that particular point in time, because as I mentioned earlier, about 100 yards away, Martinelli's crew, they were captured. I heard my buddy being taken, and Rashmit, move.
So were you able to drive away in your tank?
Yeah,
okay.
no, we were in the tank. Now, let me explain to you. We were in what we call a toad load, which was a half-track pulling a 3-inch gun,
Right.
which I call the most stupid weapon in fake ordnance. But what you had to do, you had to uncouple the half-track from the gun, if you're where the enemy was, turn the gun around, spread the trails, and then go into action from there. So actually what we had was a half-track pulling a 3-inch gun called a toad load. Then, that was during the bulge. Then, from there then, as I say, when we went up into Holland, right after the bulge, we went into what they call self-propelled. That was an M18 Hellcat made by Buick. And that had a 76 millimeter on it. That's when I was made gunner. I was gunner corporal then.
Before that, you were loader.
I was a loader.
Now, what does a loader do?
Okay, what a loader does, he puts the shells. We had a 10-man crew in the half track, and I was a loader, as I mentioned. And after the gunner fires, the breech opens, comes back, and you ram another shell in.
Now, how big are the shells?
Oh, I was going to bring some pictures. I forgot to bring it. Shell probably that long. That was that time it was a 3-inch. So about that length.
Okay.
How round was it?
Yeah, about like that.
Okay.
Oh,
So those are pretty heavy.
I should have, yeah, it was a pretty heavy shell. It's pretty, and I should have brought pictures. I had pictures of the actual shells. I went off and forgot it.
So you had, were you the only loader in the tank, or were there several loaders?
No, well, no, the rest of them were ammunition bearers. They'd get the shells up.
Okay.
But in the half track on that time, on a 3-inch gun, which was a lot like a field artillery, a lot like a 105 howitzer.
Okay.
Looked a lot like it, except it was a gun. And the difference between a howitzer and a gun is they have much faster trajectory, lower trajectory, but much faster speed per minute than a howitzer, which kind of lobs the shell.
Yeah.
But I could probably share a little bit more with you what a typical day is like as we went across Germany.
Okay.
At that time, we were attached. We were A company of our battalion, and I was 3rd platoon in 3rd platoon. So we were attached to 329th Regiment, and each platoon was with the battalion of the 329th. So they would have 3 companies, 3 infantry companies. They would have 2 companies up, 1 in reserve, but we were up all the time. They would ride our tank. A lot of the time they would ride.
Yeah.
They could ride. Until we ran into trouble. Then they'd leave.
Smart.
Excuse me. But anyway, we did get to know those guys real well. 83 was just a great division. And we kind of raced the 2nd Armored Division to get to the Elbe. And probably a couple of closest calls I had was up on the Elbe and up at the town of Barbie, which was right below Magdeburg. And right toward the end, it's not too far from the end of the war, but they put up some pretty tough resistance at that time. We lost some guys. And
did all of them that were in your tank, did the group you had in your tank stay together
yeah,
through?
you're a crew.
Okay, your crew.
In other words, Linda, what you had was you had a driver, you had an assistant driver, and you had a gunner, and you had a gun commander, and you had a loader.
Okay.
And I was a gunner. And we had a 50 caliber, and the sergeant, who was the gun commander, destroyer commander, he was up in a ring mount, and we had through mics, you talk to each other. And so then we had 76 millimeter. We had around 40 rounds we would carry in the TD. And as I mentioned earlier when I talked to you before we started, coming out, other guy vets, I'm sure tell you the same thing. A lot of it was just dumb luck. Just, and I had fired my last round up on, we were firing at some buildings, and a lieutenant crawled up in the back of the TD. And all of a sudden there was an explosion right in front of us. Before that, I told the Kuka, the sergeant, that I just fired my last round, we're out of here. Well, just at that time there was an explosion, which happened to be a Panzerfaust, and Jerry's were close in. And we backed up, and another Maynard went down, pulled up the same place we were. The Indian Warrant got there and they got hit. And the driver was killed. Andy Reimer, young, about 18, 19-year-old, he was killed. I don't know whether he was a gunner or not, I'm not sure. But then they got knocked out. But so it's a lot of luck.
Yeah.
And just kind of the good Lord taking care of you, you know. But a typical day, you're pretty much following orders, and as we moved across Germany, you know, we carried the GIs.
Now, how did you guys eat? Was it just the strictly K rations
Rations.
and C rations, or were you able to get
All
any
rations.
fresh food at all?
No.
Once you, I guess you did in France, but you didn't once you hit Belgium and Germany, right?
You're right, correct. We
Okay.
had France, but once you hit Belgium and across Germany, it was all rations.
Okay.
C rations, not good. K rations were bad.
What are the difference between C rations and K rations?
Well, C rations, you had a little metal can, and in fact, I did one of the dumbest things I ever did in my life in France.
Cut it on the can.
You got one? Oh. Anyway, what I did, you did a little key, like you open a, remember? You open
Sardines?
Sardines, something like
Okay.
that, had a little key. And you typically get there and you had a little piece left, you know, I was going to pull it up like that. So I sliced off one of my finger, you know.
Ooh.
I wasn't too smart. But C rations were like pork and beans, and not that great. K rations, you had a box like this, and you had crackers, you had a candy bar. It's so many years now, I forget exactly what all was in there. But some cheese. There was a breakfast cereal, which I'm going to be made right here in Cincinnati, by the way. Anyway, there was breakfast cereal. There was meat of some kind. It could have been Spam. Candy bar, cigarettes, of all things, all in the K ration.
So how many K rations did you carry, or were they brought into you?
Actually brought in, and we'd carry maybe, I don't know, God, this is so many years ago, Linda. Probably 2 or 3, you know, you had it on you at a time. You have to carry several days.
Right.
Several days.
Now, you talked about the tanks and stuff. How fast did tanks move? What was their speed?
Well, believe it or not, this, in fact, very interesting, if you ever get up in New England area, the Southwestern Military Museum of New England is the town of Danbury. And it's pretty much dedicated to our battalion because we came out of the 43rd Connecticut National Guard. And there is an M18 there that is exactly like what we had. You saw some picture there.
Pictures.
And in fact, we rode in our 50th reunion. We actually could go 50 miles. We carried infantry at 30, 35 miles an hour.
Okay,
But we had an airplane engine,
okay.
and we could move. In fact, they clocked that one at 50 miles an hour.
So you said you carried 40 rounds.
Well, 40, what we had was, we had the main gun, which I was a gunner for, was 76 millimeter. You saw it in the picture. Then we had a ring mount 50 up in the turret. So those were the weapons.
Okay.
Each of us carried a carbine, 30 caliber carbine.
So being as you could only carry 40 rounds at a time for the big
So the 76 millimeter. Yeah.
did you have like a maximum distance that the tank would go before you could turn around and have to go back to the depot?
Well, typically what you would do, they'd bring ammo up, they'd bring gas up.
Okay.
You heard of the Red Ball Express?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, that was quartermaster and ordnance came into it, but they'd bring gas and food and from the rear, and we would be supplied like when, as I say, thinking back, that's a little difficult to remember exactly, but we were fired, replaced ammo, and had to get gas up. We had 5-gallon beat-ons, they call them, of gas.
Okay.
And we had to fill. We do about 3 miles to the gallon.
Oh.
So.
We weren't known for fuel
Yeah.
efficiency.
So not too. We didn't go too far. But we did cover across Germany. I know we covered 210 miles in 10 days.
Well, we
During
interviewed
combat.
another tank gunner who was also in the Ruhr Valley, and I
Right.
guess that was some pretty horrible fighting that occurred there. Can you
Yeah,
talk a little
Ruhr.
about that?
Well, actually, we kind of lucked out a little bit. We had some engagements. One in particular, I remember, we were coming into a town, and all of a sudden they were flying white flags, in the town. And well, this is going to be a piece of cake, Well, then evidently there was either a refugee or whatever. Somebody came up and said Soldaten in the wood. We were going into a trap and didn't know it, but. Turned out there were a lot of Hitler Youth, young.
Yeah.
They were young. but we lost, 83rd lost some guys there. And that particular, that could have been a little, could have been worse than it
So that's
turned
where
out.
they were trying to, the bridge, they were trying
Or
to blow up
Remagen,
this-
you mean?
Yeah.
Remagen Bridge?
Mhm.
Well, we tried to get a bridge at Dusseldorf,
Mhm.
but the Remagen Bridge, that was just, again, that was luck.
Yeah.
That, you know, that they blew it, they tried to blow it, and it didn't go. And so we got tanks over, and we got troops over there. That actually shortened the war.
Did it?
Yeah, no question.
Now, you said you had the opportunity to take out a locomotive. You want to talk a little about that? Was it a German locomotive?
Oh, yeah.
Was it a troop
Not
train,
one
an
of ours.
armament train? Or, no, I didn't know if it was that or
No, it was German.
Italy's. Or,
Yeah, it was German. For sure, anything in Germany was German at that point.
yeah.
But we were coming into this town of Barbie, and we got caught in some mortar, we were catching some mortar, and later on up at, I don't know whether that was before or after, no, it had been before. But I was directed by the sergeant and lieutenant evidently that there was a locomotive trying to get out, get out of town.
Mm-hmm.
So I fired 2 rounds, I guess. First round was short, second round I got it. So probably somewhere around 1,500 yards, something like that.
And
But
now
we-
this was a troop train or a supply
Well,
train?
I
or
never found out exactly what it
What it
was.
was?
I think it had some troops on it,
Did it?
because they said when we knocked it out that kind of all hell broke loose. So,
Yeah.
but from there, as I say, we moved over, and 83rd was losing some guys. There were some snipers, and then that's when I was trying to find the snipers. I
Uh-huh.
was firing the buildings and so forth,
Yeah.
because the lieutenant had crawled up on the TD. But to a great extent, that pretty much covers what
Now, you said when you crossed the Elbe, you guys met the Russians.
we met the Russians. Yeah.
I've had a couple other veterans who said they were firing at each other until they realized who each other was. Did that
That
occur?
didn't happen to us, fortunately.
And you said they weren't not the greatest of people to encounter on Can you tell a
no.
little bit about your encounter with them?
Well, let me phrase this way. Some of my buddies who were supposedly liberated by the Russians in the POW,
Right.
that were captured in the Bulge,
Yes.
their word was recaptured. In fact, a couple of them really actually tried to escape from the Russians.
So the Russians kept on.
I mean,
Yes.
they were just not, and there's a little story I shared with you, when...
you can share here if you'd like.
Oh, okay, when we crossed the Elbe, that I had a German woman grab me by the legs and said, "Nicht schießen, mein Kinder, don't shoot my babies." And, last thing in the world we're going to do is, shoot any babies. So I don't know, I gave her candy or something. But anyway, when the Russians came, when they knew the Russians were going to take over, we were going back across the Elbe, the women, with very good reason, were absolutely petrified and just begging us to take them back with us, which we couldn't do. But they were offering rings and anything because they knew that they're going to be raped, which they were, and because the Russians were, they were tough and not good people,
Yeah.
not good people, tough fighters.
Backing up just a little bit on the home front, you say you were in college when you enlisted in the service, so you weren't married at the time?
No, single.
Okay, so you got married when you came back home?
When I came back out of service, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
How was it adjusting back to civilian life when you got home? Was it an easy adjustment or any difficulties?
I didn't have too much trouble, I guess. Came back and I came off a farm. I grew up on a farm. And
Here in Ohio?
yeah, in Ohio, town of Amelia, outside of Amelia, Claremont County. And came out. I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to go to college, and then so I had to finish on a GI. But then April 10th, 1946, our 12-room farm home burned to the ground. We lost everything we had, and then the water. So you used a cistern in the well and had a 500-gallon tank, on there. But our farm home burned and made it a little difficult for me to return to school, which I didn't go, which I regret. But stayed on the farm a while, and then after that went into sales, practicing sales all my life,
Have you?
insurance, and financial planning. So
What were you majoring in college when you?
agriculture. I was
Agriculture.
in Kaju Ag because
Okay.
I was going to coach and teach
Where?
history.
Ah,
Because I love
Okay.
history.
yeah, I do too. History is a great subject.
Right.
Okay. Just, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Basically, what I always ask my interviews is if you could say one thing to the next generation about your time in the service, what words of wisdom or guidance or what would you share with them, pass down to them?
Well, freedom, of course, is I do some speaking to schools. In fact, I have one coming up, and speak to quite a few students, young people, and just get across to them freedom is not free. And our country has paid a tremendous price all the way through all the wars, First World War, Civil War, World War II, Korean, Vietnam, Desert Storm, all of them. And when we lose our good young men, and some women, certainly, that's a horrible price. So I'm very proud that I was in service, proud to be an American. I'm on Americanism Committee in the Legion. Try to promote as much as I can. I worry that our military history, as we talked earlier, is going to be lost. I hope not. And just don't hesitate to serve your country, love your country, and be proud of it. Which I'm proud of the time I served, for sure.
Great.
Anything else?